It's easy, in a way, to talk about the date a church was built or about the address where it was located. What's harder is to document the unseen way God works through simple, everyday things to change people's hearts. Because a church isn't a building, it's people. St. Paul is a congregation where God's word is preached, where precious souls are brought into God's family through baptism, where Jesus assures us of forgiveness with his own body and blood. St. Paul is a gathering of people with whom we've shared our greatest joys and our deepest sorrows. It's where God's people come together to encourage each other all the way to heaven. As we look back over the past 125 years, we thank God for his grace to us here at St. Paul and pray that he would continue to guide and bless our future. It all started in 1892 when two men from Lake Mills asked Pastor Ponko from St. John in Newville to come preach for a service in Lake Mills. On the afternoon of August 14th, 1892, 42 people gathered for worship in a building that had previously been the Odd Fellows Lodge and the public school. And they kept coming back. The next summer, in 1893, they purchased that building for $650 and officially became Evangelical Lutheran St. Paul's Congregation. Those first years weren't always easy. One of the early pastors was Reverend Herman Gieschen. Pastor Gieschen pastored the Lutheran Church in Lake Mills, and the Lutheran Church in Marshall, and the Lutheran Church in Cambridge, and on top of that, opened St. Paul as a grade school and taught there 4 days a week as the only teacher. But over the years, the congregation grew and settled into the community. They tore down that old lodge and built a brand new church building in 1903. After a number of pastors stayed only a few years and then moved on, Pastor Rosh came in 1911 and stayed for the next 47 years. Then disaster struck. On Saturday, July 13th, 1912, lightning struck that new church. Despite firefighters' best efforts, it burned to the ground. People around Lake Mills were heard wondering whether that would be the end of St. Paul. But those Lutherans gathered for Sunday worship the next day, and with tear-streaked faces, voted to rebuild their church. As the Apostle Paul wrote, "We know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose." 1 year later, those same Lutherans dedicated a red brick church on Madison Street that would serve St. Paul for the next 92 years. When the school outgrew the classroom space in the church basement, a new school was built in 1958. 5 years later, Lakeside Lutheran High School moved on to its beautiful new campus in Lake Mills, beginning a partnership through which God has allowed both Lakeside and St. Paul to flourish. Generation after generation, parents and congregation have worked hand in hand to bring the love of Jesus to their children. As the Apostle John wrote, "I have no greater joy than to hear that my children are walking in the truth." In 1982, St. Paul went to having 2 pastors instead of 1. One of those pastors, Carl Gergel, was elected district president in 1988 and WELS president in 1993. As the members of St. Paul celebrated their 100th anniversary in 1993, it was becoming clear that either the Madison Street facility would need to be expanded or it would be time to relocate. Both options were considered, and in 2001, 23.8 acres of the Unts Farm south of Lake Mills were purchased as the future home of St. Paul. In June of 2005, members gave a tearful goodbye to the building on Madison Street and joyfully dedicated the new school, gym, and fellowship hall. The new property would have plenty of room to add a sanctuary and school additions in the future. In the 13 years since that move, every room in the school has been filled by the grade school and the growing early childhood ministry. In 2015, Pastor Tom Have joined Pastor McKenney and Pastor Rath as the new third pastor. In 2017, Pastor Nass was called in view of Pastor Rath's coming retirement. What is easily overlooked in this whirlwind tour is that there has been plenty of heartache too. But this is clear. God has been good to us. In good times and bad, His word has been proclaimed and His sacraments administered to the eternal good of people here in the Lake Mills community. As we celebrate our 125th anniversary, we're not only looking back, we're also praying that God would bless our future. We're in the middle of strategic long-range planning for our ministry and have also decided to move forward with plans to design a new sanctuary. Until Jesus returns in glory to take us to heaven, we have work to do here. We have the good news about Jesus to share with each other, with our children, and with our community. Why? Because we are St. Paul Lutheran Church.